Come on, Annie. Let's go to the movies.
It's fine. He's just can't be with us right now.
Right. Exactly.
The more cryptic we say it, the worse it sounds.
For sure. Definitely. But we'll miss him because we're going to talk movies that we actually like this week.
I know. Yeah.
At least one of us likes it. I don't know.
Yeah, right. You know. We'll find out if we actually like if we all like the movies we're going to talk this week.
Right. So you probably know because you looked at the title. We're talking a movie from 1940 and a movie from 2005.
A real gulf there.
Yep. We like to stay topical on this podcast. And these are movies that we have forced each other to watch, essentially. So like one of the movies we're going to talk about is Rebecca. This is a movie that Kyle forced me to watch. And another movie that we both watched is The Proposition from 2005, which is a movie I forced Kyle to watch. So.
Now, I'm just going to put a little asterisk next to that.
Okay.
Because I had already made a New Year's movie resolution to watch your top 100.
Right.
And The Proposition is on that. So I had already forced myself to watch it, but this just gave me the extra push to actually get it done.
Nice.
So you're helping me achieve my resolution.
Yeah, and Rebecca is a movie that I probably should have seen by now as far as Hitchcock movies go.
It's a classic.
Right. And so I'm almost positive it's been on my watch list for like a decade.
Probably, yeah.
So it's nice to have a little kick in the butt to knock one off the old watch list for sure. So that's on the agenda for today. Before we jump into all that, don't forget there's a video version of this podcast on YouTube. Go check it out there. Search Cinereelists and watch while you listen. You could also support us on Patreon, patreon.com/Cinereelists. Get extra after show episodes, which we record directly after our standard free everybody gets some episodes.
Yeah.
If you sign up to support us on Patreon, you get instant access to all of our after show episodes, every one that we've done, literally hundreds of episodes. So if you need more Kyle, James, and Zach in your life, that's the easiest way to get that done. You could also leave us an Apple Podcast review, 5 stars only. We'd appreciate that. Or send us a listener email to heyguys@cinereelists.com, REEL with an S on the end. Send a comment, a question, a list suggestion, a movie suggestion, any of those kinds of things. And we'll discuss it on a future episode of the podcast. You ready to jump in to the 1940s, Kyle?
Let's jump in.
All right, let's do it right after this clip.
Why don't you go? Why don't you leave Manderley? He doesn't need you. He's got his memories. He doesn't love you. He wants to be alone again with her.
You've nothing to stay for. You've nothing to live for, really, have you? Look down there. It's easy, isn't it? Why don't you? Why don't you?
That was Rebecca, a 1940 American romantic psychological thriller directed by Alfred Hitchcock and starring Laurence Olivier, Joan Fontaine, Judith Anderson, George Sanders, Reginald Denny, Gladys Cooper, and C. Aubrey Smith, amongst others. The official IMDb plot synopsis for Rebecca is: a self-conscious woman juggles adjusting to her new role as an aristocrat's wife and avoiding being intimidated by his first wife's spectral presence. That is an interesting plot synopsis, I would say. It's a little misleading.
Right. This is not a supernatural movie.
Sure. I mean, yes. We'll get into it.
We'll get into it, yeah.
Right. So yeah, Hitchcock movie. Would you say this is one of his big 5?
I mean, yeah, I think whenever people think Hitchcock, the big ones, obviously you've got Vertigo and you have Psycho.
Right.
You have
The
Rear
Birds,
Window,
The
Birds,
Rear Window.
North by Northwest.
That's 5.
That's probably, those are probably his 5 biggest ones.
Okay, those are like top tier. Everybody has
Yep.
to see them movies.
And then I would say Rebecca is probably the top of the second tier with like Notorious and maybe the 39 Steps, the Saboteur.
The 39 Steps is him?
Yes.
Interesting. I feel like did I just watch that? I started watching Criterion movies, trying to do like one a night on on average. I'm definitely not hitting one a night, but I was
right.
I was trying to do that. And I started at the beginning of the shelf. So I'm watching all these movies with numbers in the titles.
Oh, okay. Of
I'm
course.
literally going by alphabet.
Just going like alphabetically, start with numbers.
It's the only way I'm not gonna skip the ones that I am afraid of. Does that make sense?
Like what are you afraid of?
Like every now and then I'll pull one off the shelf and it's like a black and white German movie from 1918.
Yeah.
And like the description is really scary and it's like 6 hours long and I'm like, no, that's all right. I'll find an English speaking movie, you know what I mean, or whatever. And so I figured if I go in order by alphabet, I'm not allowed to skip anything.
Yep.
That would play out better. And so far it has. In fact, I should have made you watch this other movie that I recently saw that I'm sure we'll talk about in our top 10 last 10.
Okay.
It's called An Actor's Revenge. You
Never heard of
this?
It. No.
It's a Japanese movie, just like a visual feast for sure. I just watched 39 Steps, 26th of October.
Okay, yeah.
Can you believe that? It wasn't even a month ago, and I couldn't remember if I had seen this recently.
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't think that's not my favorite Hitchcock movie.
Sure. Not my favorite either, although I did give it 4 stars.
Okay.
So evidently I liked it. I don't remember anything about it.
Do you want to give maybe a clearer plot description for Rebecca, or should I?
Sure. No, I can do it.
Okay.
Especially since I've seen it more recently than you have.
You have, yes.
I literally watched both of these today.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So they're about as fresh as they're gonna get.
Yeah, I was telling you beforehand. I finished your movie just before we recorded.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. So Rebecca is a suspense romance film. I would categorize it as.
Yeah.
You got this rich man who is in mourning because his wife passed away due to an accidental drowning.
Mhm.
And he is traveling to another country. I forget where, like a Casablanca-ish country.
Somewhere like the Mediterranean, yeah.
Right. And he meets this woman who is the assistant of a very wealthy woman. And they begin a romance, and he decides he wants to marry her. So he proposes, and she becomes his wife, and he takes her home. And what she doesn't know, she knows that he's a wealthy man, but what she doesn't know is he's like an extremely wealthy man.
Right.
He lives in a literal castle. Like it's huge. It has like 24 servants just to upkeep the manor type of thing.
Isn't it called Mandalay?
Mandalay or something like that.
Mandalay.
Yeah. And so once she gets there, the long shadow of the wife who tragically passed away is everywhere. Like all the servants loved her. He's still a little bit in mourning, clearly. And there's one servant there, employee, servant, whatever you want to call her, who's kind of the head of household. She is named let me look
Mrs. Danvers.
Mrs. Danvers, right. Mrs. Danvers clearly had a very strong affection for Rebecca. Rebecca is the name of the wife that passed away.
Correct.
You never even learn the name of the new woman that he married.
No, she's just called the Lady de Winter the entire time. She's never given a name.
Right. So so she struggles over the course of the movie to fill the large shoes of the wife that passed away. And Mrs. Danvers, there's like this weird energy coming from Mrs. Danvers. Like she does not like this new lady. And she does some things to kind of sabotage the relationship, I would say, between the husband, the widowed husband and the new wife. Basically.
Right. She's actively trying to drive a wedge between the two.
Right. Exactly. So, and then there's a bunch of other stuff that I'm leaving out right now that we'll get to, but for right now, we'll leave it spoiler free. So that's the basic gist. Is the question is asked is this woman, is this new wife going to be able to navigate all these new social pressures as well as save her marriage to this ultra wealthy man who's kind of a jerk, I would say. Like this might have just been the attitude of men in general, but in this movie, he calls her stupid and an idiot and a bunch of other things where I'm like, wow. I mean, it felt like they wanted him to be kind of a hero.
Right.
I mean, there's reasons that we'll get into, but I was just kind of shocked at how the portrayal of the woman versus the man, we're talking, 100 years ago?
80 years ago.
80 years ago. So
85 years ago. Yeah.
It might have just been the prevailing attitude at the time.
I mean, you also get the sense, though, that does he really love this new woman?
Sure.
Or is this just trying to fill a void?
Right.
Right.
Yeah. There's a lot of that going on as well. And like, did he just pick somebody who didn't come from wealth who will be a yes woman to him versus a partner?
Yeah.
With, their own presence, life presence type of thing. And spoiler free, I enjoyed it. I thought it was interesting. I wasn't upset, but I felt like had it been made in a different moment, there might have been like a stronger, I don't know, twist at some point. I don't know. With Alfred Hitchcock, you never know. And like the movies that I've seen from him are the ones that most people have seen.
Right.
Where like they are definitely like popcorn movies, I would say. Even though they're old, they're clearly a template. And I know the reason, like historically, why he was so revered and so popular in his time and out of his time is because he told stories that the masses enjoyed. He kept people on their toes and wasn't afraid to occasionally get trashy. You know what I mean? For the time period.
Yeah. Yeah.
He was kind of the Tarantino of his time, where like the kids loved it, but the snobs were like, you can't do that type of thing.
Right.
Even in this movie, like there's some, what I feel are strong implications or strong, there are things that are implied that I'm not sure at the time it was acceptable to depict on screen. I think maybe it was smoke screened a little bit here and there. We'll get into it in spoilers, but I was surprised at that. But on top of all that, I felt like he just kept setting up things that felt like he was going to really go for it and like twist the movie, and then he didn't.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe that's because he had already had a reputation. Like I was trying to place this like where in his career.
I mean, 1940 this is pre Psycho. This is pre Vertigo, pre North by Northwest. I would say this is a little earlier in his career.
Yeah, I read this was the first American production.
Okay.
So he had already had some success making movies in the UK. Then a Hollywood producer brought him over and said, hey, let's make movies in the American system, which is weird because then he went right back to the UK and filmed it and hired a bunch of UK actors to be in it. But from here on, it seems most of his big movies, big American movies started happening. So yeah, so I don't know if I don't think he got cold feet. I think he made the movie he wanted to make. It was based on a book, so it's probably faithful to that, I imagine. But there were times where, like the plot description, I felt like maybe this was going to get a little paranormal. It doesn't really go there.
No, not really.
But I did find like the social dynamics of, you know, a woman trying to live up to an outsized personality who's no longer there. You know what I mean? That everybody seemed to love. It kind of being an impossible task.
Yeah.
Because everybody looks at you and says, like, what are you trying to fill her shoes? And she's like,
right.
She's like, I'm just a person that a dude proposed to. You know what I mean? Like, I didn't ask for any of this.
Yeah. Yeah. Like she's not as glamorous as Rebecca, or do we see pictures of Rebecca in the movie, right? It's been a while since I've seen it.
No.
So we never actually see what Rebecca looked like, but we get the impression that she's very beautiful, very glamorous. You know, everyone loved her. She's very gregarious. You know, she was like the perfect woman, the perfect wife, the perfect head mistress of the house.
And that's exactly how they talk about her throughout the movie. Like everybody this woman comes in contact with, once she gets to the castle, basically the compound, everybody just talks up this woman, and she's just like constantly like shrinking every time because she's just like, I don't know what to do with this type of thing. I can't
be like her. Yeah.
Right. And it's because of people constantly, you know, putting this woman on a pedestal that she's supposedly replacing. That's when she realizes, like, the husband, she's not even sure if the husband likes her or if she's just kind of like a coping mechanism or something like that. So, if any of that interests you, then I think it's the best version of that movie we're describing that I can think of. But also, it's a movie that just never would get made today. There's not enough happening in it. You know what I mean?
So it was remade.
I know.
But I never saw the remake. I heard it was bad. I think Netflix made it like 5 years ago. And then Diana Rigg did a version of it, like a TV movie in the 90s where she played Danvers.
Sure.
I'm not sure who else was in that one, but
you can get it made and put on Netflix. You just can't get it made and put in a theater.
What? Right. It's. I guess I want to talk. Maybe we should go into spoilers soon, because
sure.
I think.
Well, you recommended this movie, so why don't you tell me why? Why do you like it, and why did you think I would?
Sure. Well, I like it because it's kind of pulpy. Like, I would say if you compare this to the other Hitchcock movies, this one's a bit of like a beach read page turner, where there is this mystery around the death of the wife. Again, without getting into the spoiler stuff. But then you also have this spirit-like presence, right? There are no ghosts in this movie, but the Rebecca just seems to, her presence just seems to, her memory haunts the house is the best way to put it, right? In the best way, because everyone loves her, but like for the case of the new wife, she's being haunted by the presence of it. And then you do get these ethereal things like Mrs. Danvers. It seems to float across the floor. Like whenever she's shot, she hardly ever walks. She almost seems to just be like on a, I don't know, like I kind of on a gurney or a pallet, just be kind of dragged across like Spike Lee style. So yeah, I mean, for me, like this is sort of Hitchcock testing the waters into things he would do later with like Rear Window, with Psycho, with Vertigo, which I do think are stronger films. If I was to rank like quality, I would put those above Rebecca. But I just really like the storytelling of Rebecca, and I like kind of the early cinematography tricks he's using. And and for me, Mrs. Danvers is one of the first characters that scared me.
Okay.
Like I can't remember if I saw this one or the Diana Rigg one first. I think I saw this one first. And just her look and her ending, again, that's a spoiler. Like something about just the obsession that she had and how she would look at the camera. Because when she looked at the camera, she was looking at the new wife.
Sure.
And I found her haunting as a character. So to me, she's like one of the great villains of cinema.
Yeah, and they gave her a big old ugly mole too.
Yeah, they did, didn't they? Yeah.
I guess that's to signify, that she's evil or something.
Just, she's the bad guy of the story. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I mean, we didn't talk about it much, but you kind of briefly mentioned it. Like the cinematography in this, I really enjoyed that for sure.
Yeah.
Like the black and whiteness of it. I liked that it still has a little bit of the stage play effect, which isn't my favorite, but there is, it's definitely not just that. You know what I mean? There's a lot of interesting cinematography when they're like out in the wharf, like, searching the beach and stuff like that.
Oh, down by the water. Yeah.
Super cool looking, like with the fog and everything like that. Yeah. And just how much they play with light, because all they have is, the black and white frame. Like there were walk and talk shots in this where, they clearly probably had to build like structures solely for casting light.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because I'm sure they shot it on a sound stage somewhere in the UK. And so they wouldn't be building the windows that you don't see. You know what I mean? But they'd have to trick you into thinking there were windows there. And, the older black and white stuff, that's definitely stage play presence. They don't bother with that type of stuff. You know what I mean? It's not the types of movies they were making. Whereas it was clear to me that Hitchcock wanted to bring you into the story a little more than
he wanted you to think that you were in Mandalay. Because
right.
I know this is a cliche, but Mandalay itself is a character in this movie. Just of the house and its layout. I mean, doesn't this even have the whole West Wing cliche?
I don't know what that means.
Isn't Rebecca's room like in the East Wing or the West Wing? And damn her,
I don't remember them saying that specifically, but there's definitely Rebecca's room, the wife that passed away.
True. Okay.
And she is told she's not allowed to go in there.
All right. So yeah. So maybe they don't say literally don't go in the West Wing, but there's definitely is like, this is a forbidden room.
Right.
You can't go here. And obviously the character's going to go there at some point.
Right. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And when I think it's described as a suspense movie, it's because of those types of tropes where you're like, yeah, she's going to go do that. Can't wait to see what's in that room.
Right.
And then she goes in the room and you're like, where's the twist? You know what I mean? I don't know. That's how I was feeling. But, I don't want to slam the movie for what it's not. What is there was interesting. It kept me intrigued. It's a 2 hour and 10-minute black and white movie from the 1940s. So if something like that can hold my attention through the entire runtime, I think he's done something there for sure.
Yeah.
I think Hitchcock did something here. But probably won't go down as my favorite Hitchcock of all time. I did enjoy knocking it out on the old Criterion shelf, though.
Yeah, that's all right.
I had a copy of it, so
I got the Criterion. It's a good Criterion. I got the same copy of it. So
I didn't put in disc 2, but why are there two discs in that set? I couldn't figure it out.
So I assume special features or something for the second disc.
So like the first disc, they like full compression, like as much of the movie as they could on the disc, and then disc 2 is just special features.
Because I assume you have the Blu-ray, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
But I mean, I've had other Criterion titles where the movie and the special features are on the same disc.
Right.
So I don't know. I don't know why this one got that whatever treatment, but all right. Let's go into spoilers. If you haven't seen Rebecca, the movie that came out 80 years ago.
84, almost 85 years ago.
Right. Yeah. We're going to spoil it right now. So if you don't want it spoiled for you, then maybe pause it and come back. If not, keep listening. So I thought the biggest twist of this movie is that it's kind of backdoorish, kind of about lesbianism on some level. I'm pretty sure Mrs. Danvers had the hots for Rebecca.
Yeah, yes, I agree. When I watch this movie, Mrs. Danvers has an unhealthy obsession with Rebecca.
Right. And they don't explicitly
I don't think they were
say it was like a sexual attraction, but there is so much there that I can't imagine that people making the movie at the time didn't say, we're not going to say it, but that's what this is.
Right. And I don't think it was reciprocal. I think it was unrequited love on Mrs. Danvers' part.
Right.
Yeah.
So Mrs. Danvers, the one who's kind of the most obsessed with Rebecca's memory, besides maybe the husband, she is the one that's actively trying to split them up. And over the course of the movie, she just she does all kinds of things to try to split them up and try to get the goat of the new woman. And towards the end of the movie, she literally burns down the house because she gets her way, because the new wife gets her way, basically. Yep. Which was pretty wild. I read somewhere, probably Wikipedia or something like that, that wasn't a part of the book, and that they tacked that on because the producer didn't like the idea of the husband getting away with murder.
Well, right. So that's the other twist.
Right.
Is that Rebecca didn't drown accidentally.
Sure.
Right.
She was, from what I understand, a nag, and so he killed her.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if she was I don't know. I don't want to put all the blame on her of like,
sure,
like she not deserved it, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But like, yeah, you definitely get the sense that their relationship was not as wonderful as everyone put it out to be. Mm-hmm. And like maybe publicly they had this beautiful marriage, but privately there was a lot of tension between the two of them.
Right. And clearly all the staff liked the wife, Rebecca.
Right. Yep.
And gave him a hard time.
Yes.
And then when he accidentally killed her, like they got into an altercation and then he killed her. It wasn't like he set out to murder her, I guess. Is the distinction I'm trying to make.
But he does then stage her drowning, correct?
Right. He's afraid he's going to get in trouble for it, and so he stages the drowning.
Yeah, he kind of sinks her boat with her already dead body in it.
Mm-hmm. Then another body floats to land and is found, and it's not his wife, and he says it is. Mm-hmm. Like he positive identifies her. So later on in the movie, when they find the actual drowned wife, he has some explaining to do. Why did he identify the other woman as his dead wife when clearly she wasn't? And so like the last 15 minutes of the movie is kind of like a little investigation into, the wife's body surfacing. And like the question is, will the husband get in trouble for murdering his wife or not? And then right at the end, they blame it all on her.
Yeah.
Like I said, like the politics on this one are interesting because it's clearly of the time.
Right.
When there's just a lot of politics going on because they at the very end, they say that the wife had cancer, so she was going to die anyway. And that she basically goaded him into killing her. Like it wasn't really his fault because she tried to get him to kill her so that as kind of like on her way out of life, because she had cancer and was going to die, he would get in trouble. And
I'll admit, I've not read the novel.
Sure.
And I do wonder if that was some Hollywood code ending. Like, because he kind of gets away with it, correct? At the end of the movie?
Yeah, I mean, he definitely killed her.
Right. He killed her. And he doesn't really face, his house burns down, but he doesn't face like criminal repercussions.
Right. That's what they were saying on Wikipedia, I think it was.
Yeah.
Where they were like, they had to change some things because you can't just have your bad guy murder somebody and then get away with it.
Especially in Code Hollywood era.
Right.
Yes. Right. So they kind of make it up like, oh, she goaded him into it, and
and he got his house burned down. So that's the
exactly.
repercussion.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. If you just watch it for the kind of like the framing of the plot points and stuff like that, it's pretty interesting. And also, like I said at the beginning, when he's kind of wooing the new wife, he's constantly calling her stupid and idiot, and I'm like, so why does this girl want to be around him? You know what I mean? Like that would not fly today.
Right. But like also he's rich. He's not famous, but he's powerful, and I could see why she fell for him initially. To be wrapped up in the look at this rich and well-known wealthy guy who's giving me attention.
Yeah, I mean, I never fully bought that she was in love with him. But it might just be the style of acting. Like maybe like back then, I think just saying, I'll always love you, like that type of stuff. Like I think audiences just believed the words.
Right. Yeah.
Whereas nowadays, I think I need a little more plot.
Yeah. Show me a little bit more to know that. Yeah.
Right. So anything else that we absolutely need to spoil about Rebecca?
I mean, I think nothing to spoil, but I see this kind of movie laying the template for things like Gone Girl and movies that are more contemporary.
Sure.
Of the kind of like these, not so, I mean, I wouldn't call this one necessarily like a psychosexual thriller per se.
No.
But definitely, I mean, like Vertigo is probably more falls in that category. Yeah, but like definitely this idea of you have these what seems like a perfect marriage, but then when you look underneath it, it wasn't that great, and there was, more going on than what people were expecting.
Yeah, and I appreciate that, like in this time period, like people weren't necessarily making movies like this.
No.
Like I'm sure there were others, but like they were far and few between, and kind of the first of their kind. So I appreciate it for its historical significance as well as the artistry, even if it's not something that I think necessarily stands the test of time fully, but is certainly watchable as a story and a historical artifact. So, but there's movies that Hitchcock directed where I don't feel that way about. I don't feel that way about Birds or Psycho. I think those are like legitimately good movies that you can stand up next to thrillers today, and they stand up. So, I mean, the guy made like 80 something movies.
Yeah, he was very, very prolific.
Right. They can't all be those two. You know what I mean? Or some of the other top tier Hitchcock movies. But I liked this better than Marnie. I think that's another Hitchcock movie that I watched.
That is, yeah, I've never seen Marnie, but that's definitely Hitchcock.
That was another one where the gender politics in Marnie are like really kind of, it was a different time for sure. Very different time. All right. Let's letterbox rank Rebecca. What do you want me to give it stars first, since I was the one challenged?
Sure. Yes.
I gave it 4 stars.
Totally fair.
Okay. Do you remember what you gave it?
Yeah, this is a top 100 movie for me. It's my number 85. It is my favorite Hitchcock. This is a 5-star movie.
Really? This is your favorite Hitchcock movie of all time?
This is my favorite Hitchcock.
How many have you seen?
Oh, good question. I've seen a fair amount.
Okay. I don't even know how many I've seen. Let
me see if I can pull it up really quickly on Letterboxd. How many I've seen?
Right. Let's sit in silence while we pull it up.
I've seen 13 Hitchcock.
Okay.
So yeah, I mean, I could list all 13 if you really want. I like if you sort them by popularity on Letterboxd, I've seen almost all the most popular ones. I think my biggest jump is that then I've seen The Lady Vanishes, which is like down on his 3rd row of popularity. But pretty much everything else I've seen like the top couple rows of his movies.
I mean, this is similar to me. Like I've seen Psycho, Vertigo, Rear Window, The Birds, North by Northwest, Rope.
Right. Rope.
Rebecca.
Dial M
now.
for Murder.
I haven't seen Dial M for Murder. That's good.
It's good. That one looks it's based on a play and it's definitely shot like a stage play.
Okay.
So
Rebecca Now, I've seen that. Haven't seen Strangers on a Train, Notorious.
That one's good. I like
Thief.
Strangers on a Train.
Then the 39 Steps, and then I take a decent jump to Marnie.
Okay.
And then another decent jump to Lifeboat, and that's it for me.
The Lady Vanishes is an interesting one.
Okay.
That might be one of my first Hitchcock movies, and it's also 38. It's one of his earlier ones.
Mm-hmm. So that's probably a British production.
Yeah. I think that one's all about like a train and a woman who gets on the train but doesn't get off the train.
That sounds like Strangers on a Train.
So for a long time, I thought I'd seen Strangers on a Train because I was like, oh yeah, there's this one about a woman getting on a train, not getting off of it.
Mm-hmm.
And it turns out like, oh no, it's a very different movie. Lady Vanishes is the one. Now I've seen both by this point, but yeah, I conflated the two for a long time.
Cool. Well, I've got 3 sets now of Hitchcock movies on 4K. I need to break those out. That might be my resolution for next year.
So I know do they have 3 collections now of Hitchcock is what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay. I have collection 1.
Okay.
And collection 2 didn't really interest me because nothing on there really jumped out.
Collection 1, they put a lot of bangers in there for sure.
I think the only one is collection 1 missing North by Northwest.
I don't remember.
Okay. I can't read it from this angle. I can grab mine, but I gotta stand up over there. So
it's fine. We'll just go to blu-ray.com.
Okay.
Alfred Hitchcock.
Well, I can definitely just grab mine now at this rate.
All right, do it.
All right, I'll grab mine, Ian. You can pull up what number 2 and 3 are.
Okay. All right.
Okay, so collection 1 has Rear Window, Vertigo, Psycho, and The Birds, which are like 4 big heavy hitters.
Sure.
Personally, I've only seen I need to rewatch The Birds. I've only seen that once. I would swap out The Birds for North by Northwest.
Sure. Then the second set has Saboteur, Masters of a Doubt, The Trouble with Fanny, Marnie, and Family Plot.
And I think I don't know if I've seen Saboteur.
Okay. And then the third one has Rope, The Man Who Knew Too Much, Torn Curtain, Topaz, and Frenzy.
Okay.
But yeah, the first one, Rear Window, Vertigo, Psycho, The Birds. I mean, that's like short of North by Northwest. That's that's the ones people know.
That's his top 4 most popular in Letterboxd right there.
Right. Exactly. So I imagine most people stopped at the first collection, but
yeah, I would have, unless you're a huge completionist.
Yeah, I'm not even that big of a completionist. It's just they put these on sale pretty often to where they're like $5-6 a piece.
Right.
So I don't mind pulling the trigger when it gets that low, but yeah. I'm excited to check one off the old Alfred Hitchcock list.
There you go.
For sure. All right, let's move on to our next challenge. This was for Kyle to watch 2005's The Proposition. We're going to get into it right after this clip.
You want to know why I've come back?
I know why you've come back, Charlie. Look at that. Be humble of heart, Charlie. This is the end of things. You're my brother, Charlie. You belong with me. We are a family. All of us.
Just getting reacquainted.
Samuel, be kind. tolerance, Charlie. Since I was a boy.
He's a vicious little cretin.
That was The Proposition, a 2025 Australian Western film directed by John Hillcoat and written by Nick Cave, musician extraordinaire.
Of the Bad Seeds, right?
Yeah, Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds, yeah.
Yep.
The movie stars Guy Pearce, Ray Winstone, Danny Houston, John Hurt, David Wenham, and Emily Watson, amongst others. The official IMDb plot synopsis for The Proposition is: a lawman apprehends a notorious outlaw and gives him 9 days to kill his older brother, or else they'll execute his younger brother. So this is an Australian set Western.
Correct.
Basically. Do you want to give us a little more robust plot synopsis?
Yeah, sure. So Ray Winstone plays the said lawman, and he's a general, a commander. It's hard to tell if like the army is running this place or if there's like a local police force, but he's kind of tasked with, as he puts it, taming this area.
Mm-hmm.
And to him, that means to bring in outlaws. But there's also a bit of an undercurrent of that also meaning like getting Aboriginal people to assimilate to the local culture.
Absolutely.
I would say that's not the forefront of this story, but that's definitely happening in the background, is the assimilation of the indigenous people.
Happening and has happened type of thing.
Right. Yes. Yep. So yeah, at the beginning of the movie, he has arrested Guy Pearce and another character who I don't know who the actor was, who plays his younger brother. Guy Pearce is kind of the middle child, and they are part of this crime family. And Guy Pearce's older brother, who's played by, is that Danny Houston? Yeah, Danny Houston. He's still at large. He has committed a pretty heinous crime that involved the rape and murder and torture of a family, a white family. And so Ray Winstone wants to bring the older brother to justice. So he makes this proposition where he tells Guy Pearce, the middle brother, hey, go get your older brother, bring him in. If you won't, I'll kill your younger brother.
Mm-hmm.
And like you get the sense that the younger brother isn't really cut for this life. Like,
sure.
Like yeah, he's an outlaw, but he doesn't have the grit or the toughness that Guy Pearce and then his older brother Danny Houston seem to have.
Yeah, he just gets dragged around by his older brothers.
Exactly. Yeah.
He doesn't really comprehend what he's doing. There's an insinuation too that he's not fully functioning mentally.
Yeah, maybe not exactly. Yeah.
Right. I mean, like as much as those characters would know about such things back in, I don't know, when is this set?
1880s.
1880s. So it's like I don't think they had medical definitions for what was wrong with the brother, but
no, he was just.
Yeah, there's lines in the movie where they're like, I forget exactly how they phrase it, but they're definitely implying that like he's dim-witted,
a little simpler than the rest of the brothers, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, so, and I mean, so this is a unique Western.
Mm-hmm.
You've actually recommended this is not the first Australian Western you recommended to me.
No, I like Australian Westerns.
You do. I could tell that. Yeah. Because you recommended to me Sweet Country with what's the guy from Jurassic Park? What's his name? Alan Grant.
John Hammond?
No. who plays Dr. Grant? I can't think of names right now. Sam Neill. Right. Which I really liked. And then you also recommended Rover, which is sort of a neo-Western.
Yeah, that's a modern Western.
Yeah, I did not care for Rover whatsoever. I found that movie to be very nihilistic and dark.
Yep.
And this movie is dark for sure. It is a violent, in this case, Wild West of Australia.
Mm-hmm.
But there's this, I don't know, there's this almost tenderness in this movie, and that's mostly with Ray Winstone and his wife Emily Watson, where Ray Winstone is trying, like at the same time while he's trying to bring in the outlaws and tame the indigenous people, and he's also just trying to like bring a normal life to her, because obviously they're transplants from England. They talk about missing England, so like he has a house in the middle of the outback with a picket fence. Now there's no garden. There's no lawn. It's just barren. But he's like, this is our house. Oftentimes the windows are boarded up to like not remind them of sort of what the outside world is. Like there's a climactic scene around a Christmas dinner where they get all dressed up and they even have a Christmas tree shipped in. And so, yeah, so there's this sweetness that he's trying to like provide normalcy for his wife amongst a rather savage land. And I would say this is a Western that takes its time also, where there's violence, there's action, there's big performances, but it's not rushing from moment to moment. And it's taking its time to enjoy the scenery. It's taking its time to kind of tell these small stories about the Aboriginal people and their assimilation. It's to tell these stories about Ray Winstone and his wife. And it's, yeah, like I would say that the plot is important, but that's not the only reason the movie exists. It's not there just to have this revenge plot.
Sure. Yeah, this movie, like minute to minute, has the most sunset shots, I think, of any movie ever.
The sun is constantly. You would think Terrence Malick made this movie,
right? For sure. But I love it. It's a dark movie for sure.
Yeah,
like you got a lot of innocent people living in a very lawless environment, I would say. Even the people in charge of the law are like not upstanding moral people, I would say.
No, they seem to be criminals who just kind of chose the right side of the law, in quotation marks.
Yeah. But some of the things that you described are reasons why I like it as well. Like you've got kind of like what they set up at the beginning of the movie. They set up Ray Winstone to just kind of be like this just evil sheriff, basically, who's just going to hunt down these boys who are clearly our heroes in this story. And over the course of the film, you realize that it's far more complicated than that. Both the heroes that you expected to be heroes have shades of gray for sure. Some of them are downright black, I would say. Not in skin color, just in soul. And and the sheriff himself clearly has a method to what he's doing. Even though it feels unfair, his goal was to get the person who did the crime.
Right.
It goes
again, a
horribly
pretty heinous
wrong.
crime too.
Yeah, it goes horribly. His plan, which leveraged people who were more innocent than the people he was trying to get, went horribly wrong. But you could see why he was doing it, and it wasn't just because he was sadistic, type of thing. Yeah. So that's why I like the movie. That and like the soundtrack, like Nick Cave for sure, like just kind of scored this on his own and made up songs for it. And
it's a mix of like folk sounding songs. I don't know if these are actual folk songs from the era or not, but they sound like they could be. But then also like they're set to sort of jangly, distorted guitars at times, or the interesting like sort of reed organs being played in the background. Like they're not instruments you normally would hear within a soundtrack. There's no orchestral thing going on.
Right. Exactly. We're gonna have to talk spoilers on this one too, because I want your read on the ending.
We definitely can.
But. So I really like the way this one's shot. I think at the time, like 2005, I remember there being like a lot of Westerns. I was watching a lot of Westerns, and this kind of came out of nowhere for me as something that felt it has all the Western cliches that you'd expect, the horses, the gunfights and the that type of stuff, but the combination of all of them felt fresh.
Yep.
The idea of like this outlaw group of brothers, not an original thought when it comes to Western movies for sure, but the idea that like they've not necessarily assimilated, but they're not threatened by the Aborigines. You know what I mean? Like they work with them.
They work exactly, yes.
Type of thing. They're not trying to eliminate them or force them into becoming Englishmen or anything like that. Also, kind of the culture clash between these Irish brothers who are not really looking to assimilate anybody, and then you got the British colonizers who clearly are. Like, there's that great shot at the end when the sheriff, this is non-spoiler, it's fine, where the sheriff is like, he releases his Aboriginal servant,
yep.
And the first thing that guy does is take off his shoes.
Yes, yeah. To say like, okay, now I'm going to be back to who I want to be.
Right. Like, why? Like, to him, like, why are we wearing these? You know what I mean? What does he care? It's a British thing, or it's a white man thing, not
to wear shoes,
not his thing. So I liked the little touches of that kind of stuff too. And around the time there was like 3:10 to Yuma, that remake was released, and a couple others. Those are movies I like too, but they're Hollywood Westerns.
Yes.
Like they're following that formula. And then you also have around this time, Guy Pearce was in, off the back of Memento. His star was rising, and he had been in a series of like sci-fi and action movies that were really awful, I would say. And then this was like the first one since Memento where I was like, okay, he just needs to make movies with good filmmakers. Clearly,
yeah, right.
You know?
Like, he can be a good actor.
Right. All that being said, John Hillcoat, the guy who directed this, has continuously let me down since this movie.
Okay, so this is where he peaked.
Yeah, like I'm trying to remember. I think he had that movie on Netflix that was that Ben Affleck was in. I was so excited for that movie, and then it came out, and I was just like,
you know what you're talking about.
You would if I said the name of it. I'm trying to pull it up. There we go.
Movie on Netflix with Ben Affleck.
999.
Oh, okay. I forgot that Ben Affleck was
in that. It's a bank heist movie with Ben Affleck. And
yeah.
Turns out it's not good. The Road is good. He directed The Road.
Oh, with Viggo Mortensen?
Yeah.
That's a real downer.
It's a real downer, but that is a well-made movie.
It is, yeah.
I never read the book. I've heard the book's better, but people always say that. So
I mean, the book is Cormac McCarthy. The book is interesting. It's written from like first perspective. There's no punctuation or capitalization. Maybe there's punctuation. There's no capitalization in the book. It's like one of those. It's a weird style. It's not a weird style. It's an interesting stylistic choice.
Then he made a movie called Lawless, which has Shia LaBeouf and Tom Hardy in it.
Oh, I've seen Lawless.
Yeah. That's a John Hillcoat movie. It's all right.
It's fine. It's kind of forgettable, but it's not bad.
It's absolutely forgettable, for sure. And then The Proposition and 999. He's got some others too, but those.
I mean, Lawless is another like gang of brothers movie.
Yeah. Oh, he made this movie George and Tammy as well. I think somebody has seen that. That's the No, this is something different. This is interesting.
Okay, I haven't heard of that movie.
Jessica Chastain, Michael Shannon, and Steve Zahn. A chronicling of a country music power couple. This one's got good reviews. 3.7 on Letterboxd. I'll have to check it out.
Okay.
Unfortunately, John Hillcoat made a movie I love, and so now I have to see all the movies he releases.
Hoping that he could bring back the magic.
Right.
But I mean, this movie is beautifully shot, like you said.
Sure.
I mean, right, it takes this rather unforgiving Australian outback land and makes it look glorious, as arid and as rough as it is.
Yeah. And I like the character touches, like even with the design of the sheriff whose wife he's trying to shield kind of like the worst of the outback from, I would say.
Right.
They have this house built in the middle of nowhere.
Yep.
With this immaculate yard. You know what I mean? With like plants and gardens and like rock gardens, and like it's just completely out of place because he's clearly keeping her away from the town where all the dirtiness happens. Doesn't want her to know anything about his business, and yeah, seems
Right,
like
because
a
she
proper
comes into
woman.
town a couple times, and like
Mhm.
even comes to the jail, and he's just like, you can't be here, and or
Right.
people will come talk to her, and he's like, don't approach my wife, don't talk to her.
Right.
So
Yeah.
yeah, he's trying to kind of keep her innocent of the surroundings.
Yep, for sure. So, all right, we're gonna talk spoilers for the Proposition. So,
Yeah.
once again, if you haven't seen the Proposition, you don't want to know exactly how it ends, then pause this and come back to it. If not, listen on. Kind of forgot what I wanted to say about the very. Oh, why do you think? Why do you think Guy Pearce doesn't kill the sheriff?
Because I don't think Guy Pearce is evil like his brother.
Okay. Because I guess you never really see him do anything that evil in the movie.
No. Like you get the impression that he wasn't involved in the triple murder that the older brothers wanted for.
Okay.
Right. He and his younger brother kind of left the gang before that happened.
Mm-hmm.
Like, yeah, I guess I saw Guy Pearce's character as like he has somewhat of a moral compass.
Mm-hmm.
Right. His older brother has no moral compass. His older brother will just murder and rape and just, do what he wants. And his younger brother doesn't really know what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
He's just, like he said, along for the ride. And I think Guy Pearce is sort of the moral center of it.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I guess the movie ends where we kind of mentioned there's this Christmas dinner with Ray Winstone and his wife. The older brother and the rest of the gang show up at the Christmas dinner. They beat up Ray Winstone bad. Like I thought he was dead at one point. I was surprised he's still alive. They start to get ready to assault Emily Watson. I don't think the assault ever actually happens, but it's definitely, going to happen. And at that point, Guy Pearce shows up, kills the assaulter, kills his brother in a very slow way, right? But then does not kill the Ray Winstone, the captain. Does he say something to him? I feel like he says something to him.
He says something to his brother.
He says something to his brother. I thought he said something to like, oh, that's right. He after his brother kind of gets shot and walks away, he turns to Ray Winstone and says, "I'm going to go join my brother."
Yeah.
That's what he says. Yeah.
He says to the brother, "This is over," or something like that.
Yes. Yeah.
Because he realizes that the older brother is just a psychopath, basically, and like,
right.
He can't. He's never going to stop being a psychopath, basically. Okay.
Yeah, I guess
that makes sense.
I felt like he never had a reason. Like for him, there wasn't a justification in killing the Ray Winstone character. I mean, right. Ray Winstone did capture him, and the younger brother did die or succumb to his injuries of a lashing under Ray Winstone's care. So I guess if there's any reason he would want revenge, it was for that. But I also didn't get the impression that he was a vengeance-seeking character.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
It was fun to see Emily Watson again. It's been a while since we've seen her in things.
Yeah, is she still?
I mean, this is from 2005, 19 years
yeah.
ago, so it's not like a new movie with her in it. But if you, she had like a decent little run there for a while, and then seems to have relatively disappeared.
Yeah, I'm not sure what she's been in recently at all.
The last thing I saw her in was the Chernobyl miniseries on HBO. She was in that.
Oh, she was in, okay. Yeah, I saw that. She was in that.
Yep. I mean, there's no one person from that show that I like remember top of mind.
Right.
It's more about the mood of that whole show, I would say, than like one specific performance for sure. But she also has a decently big part in Synecdoche, New York. And, Punch Drunk Love.
Yep.
Theory of Everything. She had a couple that were like, you know, top tier movies for me, like mid-aughts, basically.
Mm-hmm.
But the last 10 years, just haven't seen much from her. So it's always fun to watch her in movies. Oh, she was also Equilibrium. You haven't seen Equilibrium?
I've seen Equilibrium.
Oh, okay. Who hasn't seen
Christian
Equilibrium?
Bale?
Who am I thinking of that hasn't seen Equilibrium?
I assume Zach has seen it too.
I know somebody that hasn't seen it.
Yeah, I've definitely seen Equilibrium. It's an interesting movie.
I'm seeing she was in War Horse too.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, she definitely has like a face I recognize, but it's hard for me to place her in like, oh, I know her from this movie or that movie. So yeah, I've seen all these movies. I probably would recognize that she's in them, but she doesn't stand out to me.
We need to do an audio commentary for War Horse.
And really? Why?
I don't know. I feel like it's underappreciated. So
I don't know if I was in love with that movie. It was fine. That's Spielberg, right?
It's Spielberg. It's like,
okay.
There's not too many forgotten Spielberg movies, but that is one of them.
That's a forgotten Spielberg movie for sure. Yeah.
I mean, considering it was only 10 years ago or so.
Only really.
Kind of shocking how little people talk about War Horse.
I mean, it's not very memorable.
I remember it. I need to rewatch it. I only saw it the once in the theater, but I did.
Okay.
I remember it just being too long. He needed to cut like 30 minutes out of it.
Well, because he just follows. It just follows like one horse, right? That's the whole idea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, you can't make that movie in 2 hours instead of 2 hours and 40 minutes.
Well, he's got to like, you know, CG jump through no man's land. And I don't know. Doesn't do some plowing at some point. I can't remember that movie very well.
It's been a while for me too. I need to, like I said, I need to rewatch it. Okay. Anything else with The Proposition?
Yeah. You know, I also liked John Hurt was in this movie as like a sort of another bounty hunter.
Mm-hmm.
And he only has 2 scenes and he's definitely playing it big.
Yeah.
But I would say in a movie where everyone's kind of playing it small, it was fun to have at least one big character pop up.
Sure. Yeah, definitely. I agree. I mean, the moment in the bar at the beginning with John Hurt is pretty great because you just don't know who this guy is and where he's coming from.
Yes, that's right. Yep.
Yeah. And then you kind of assume that he's done. And then all of a sudden
you think that's the one time you're going to see him.
Right. Yep.
And he pops up a second time.
For sure. All right. Let's letterbox The Proposition. What are you going to give it, Kyle?
Sure. I'll go first. I'll give it 4 stars.
All right. I gave it 5.
There we go. All right.
It's my 51st favorite movie of all time, supposedly.
Okay.
I'm not sure that's right. I probably need to readjust this. I think it'll still be a top 100, but so just below The Proposition is Whiplash, and just above it is Iron Giant. And I kind of feel like this needs to be reordered because I like The Proposition. 5-star movie for sure.
Yeah.
After having seen it maybe 4 times now. But I'm not sure it deserves to be between Whiplash and the Iron Giant.
Those are strong movies.
Yeah, for sure.
In my opinion. Yeah.
I mean, The Proposition is 4 spots above Saving Private Ryan. And that kind of feels like I need to reorder something.
Yeah, again, this is your top 100. You can order however you want.
Well, and you figure when I made the top 100, it was like 2014, 2015.
Right. Okay.
So The Proposition was like 10 years old at that point. So it was fresher in my mind.
Pretty fresh for you. Yeah.
Things. I mean, 10 years is not exactly fresh, but yeah.
I mean, it's fresher than Iron Giant. I guess Whiplash had just come out. in that case.
Yeah. 52, the 52nd slot of my top 100 was kind of audacious for Whiplash, considering it had just come out. But I'm happy to report 10 years later, Whiplash has only grown in my estimation.
I slotted Annihilation in the top 50 the year it came out.
Okay.
So,
and you think it's holding?
Yeah, I mean, I've seen Annihilation like 3 times. I went on 4K, and every time I watch it, I enjoy it as much as the first time.
That's one I need to get on 4K too. I haven't got it.
It looks good on 4K. Yeah.
Nice. The most recent movie in my top 50 is probably La La Land.
Okay.
That's in my top 10. And it's been in my top 50 since the year it came out.
I know my most recent movie in my top 100 is Everything Everywhere All at Once, but that's somewhere like in the 90s.
Mm-hmm.
For top 50, yeah, it's going to be, I mean, probably Annihilation is, I wonder where that stands. But I always try and, whenever we redo our top 600 or top 700,
mm-hmm.
I'll go ahead and just sort of reevaluate my top 100 and see where things stand. Okay, Annihilation is at 42.
Okay.
Which is between Terminator and Wayne's World. Now, I don't know if I like Annihilation more than Wayne's World, so I might need to reassess that.
Sure. What do you think? How do I phrase this? Do you think there's a movie that could come out today that could immediately break your top 10?
Probably no. Just because if you look at my top 10, like they're almost all nostalgia picks. Everything in my top 10 is from the 20th century except for Children of Men.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, okay. So I should say, is it possible? Yes, because a movie like Children of Men does not have the nostalgia factor around it.
Sure.
It's just, I think, a incredible movie that, you know, as depressing as it is, I think I can watch over and over again because it's so well made. But if you look at my top, I mean, yeah, if you look at my top 20, 25, 30, everything in there for the most part is movies I have some connection to from like when I was a kid.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Whiplash is at 26, so that breaks the mold, and then Inglourious Basterds at 38. But yeah, my top 25 is almost all sort of not nostalgia picks, but movies that have been with me for a long time.
Sure, you legitimately think they're good, and they're
and they
have the benefit of the fact that you've known about them for a long, long time.
Exactly, yeah. And I know what I love about them so much. Yeah. How about yourself? Do you think there's a movie that could come out now that could break your top 10?
Like first year of release? No.
Okay. But with time?
I mean, it'd have to be something really, I mean, La La Land, I remember it being in my top 100 the year it came out. And then over the last 8 years, it has made its way to number 5.
Okay. So, yeah, it's moved its way up.
Yeah. I wonder how many times I've seen La La Land. What do you think the over under is on how many times I've seen La La Land?
I think it's 6.
6 times since 2016.
Yeah.
The answer is 4.
Oh, okay. So I was just a little over.
I don't think that's right. It's probably
You think you've seen it more?
It's probably 5 or 6.
Okay.
And I just didn't mark it.
Just haven't logged it every time. That's all right.
As much as I try to be as religious at marking things as I can be, I do miss it.
We can't be perfect.
I do miss it every now and then. So, all right. So we swapped 4s on each other's movies, basically.
Yeah. But I mean, we both enjoyed the movie that the other person assigned us.
Absolutely.
I don't think there'd be top 100s for either of us, but.
So there's only there's 2 more Australian Westerns I would recommend to you.
Okay.
One, I'm having a problem remembering the name of. And I tried to figure it out earlier when you were talking and I couldn't.
Okay.
So I'll try to figure that out. But the other one is The Nightingale, which
Yeah.
which you're holding off on for now. I get it.
You've recommended to me, but I think one time I asked you for a recommendation. You said Nightingale. I was like, give me something easier, and then you gave me Sweet Country.
Mm-hmm.
So
there's another one. The one I'm not remembering is like about Aboriginal colonization,
Okay.
and there's like a massacre, and of Aboriginal people, and one person survives. And then like you fast forward like 10 years, and now the person that survived, who was like 6, is now like 16.
okay.
And he wants to get revenge because
I'm intrigued by that.
They basically killed everybody in his tribe. And then there's like missionaries who are like caught in the middle, who like don't want anybody to kill anybody on either side, and they're like trying to keep the peace. Anyway, it's really good in the ways that most of these Australian westerns are, in that like it's trying something new. And then The Nightingale is one of the best revenge movies of all time.
I mean, I want to see it, but my understanding is the opening scene is pretty brutal.
Right. If you can get past the opening scene, the rest of it's pretty great, because it's a woman in a time period where she has no agency whatsoever.
Yeah. Yeah.
And she recruits an Aborigine person to be her tracker, to track down the guys that she wants to get revenge from. And so that guy is also disadvantaged in society.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Like they're both kind of like out of their element, I would say. Not that he's out of his element, but they're both, not well respected by your average white guy in Australia at the time.
The colonialists.
Right.
Yeah. The colonists.
And so they kind of fly under the radar throughout the course of the movie, and they get things done that your normal person couldn't, essentially. So it's a good one.
What do you think your next Hitchcock's going to be?
I don't know. I have no clue.
Which of the big ones? What have you not seen?
Seen all the big ones. I mean, the big 5.
Well, you see the big 5. Okay, of like his like top 15.
Right.
If you go by popularity, what have you seen?
What haven't I? The first by popularity that I haven't seen is Dial M for Murder.
And that one's good.
Mm-hmm.
It's well made. It's just it is based on a stage play, so the camera is very much fourth wall throughout that movie.
Sure.
But it's also, the original is a fourth wall kind of thing. So
right. Then Strangers on a Train.
Yeah, it's Strangers on a Train. I mean, do you know what that one's about?
I'm guessing these people that don't know each other, they're on a train.
Yeah, so 2 guys are on a train,
mm-hmm.
and they kind of jokingly decide to commit crimes for each other. I think it's murders for each other. It's like one guy's like, "Oh, hey, I'll murder this person for you if you murder this person for me," and they kind of agree to it. And one guy thought it was kind of a joke, and one guy took it very seriously.
And do they do the murders on the train?
I don't want to tell any more than that.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Then Notorious.
Yeah, and Notorious is a spy thriller.
Mm-hmm.
And it is one of the longest Code era kisses. And like Alfred Hitchcock talked about how he was able to get this extended kiss sequence shot during the Code era.
And is it like tame by today's standards?
Oh, of course it is.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, again, that's a 1942 movie, but again, it's Code where a kiss is like a peck.
So no tongue in Notorious.
I mean, this was it Clark Gable and who's her name? She's very famous also. It's not Casablanca Woman, is it?
Casablanca Woman.
Yeah,
Ingrid Bergman.
Ingrid Bergman. I think it's Ingrid. Yeah, this is. Yeah, it's Cary Grant, Ingrid Bergman.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, they embrace for what seems like a long time for the era.
Okay.
So again, you have to go into it's kind of like Rebecca. This is a Hollywood Code era movie.
Mm-hmm.
So certain things can and can't be done, but you also know that, like Rebecca, Hitchcock, he's pushing it. He's trying to see, well, what can I get away with? What will they either not notice or allow me to slip in?
All right. Those are the top 2 rows. Then you got To Catch a Thief, Shadow of a Doubt, The Man Who Knew Too Much, and Spellbound. Haven't seen any of those.
I've seen Shadow of a Doubt, and that's a slow burn thriller about a woman whose like uncle comes back, and there's questions about what her uncle was up to while he was gone. Let's put it that way.
All right, I'm into it. I'm all about watching more.
I mean, he's one of the greatest filmmakers, so
sure.
It's hard to watch his movies and be like, oh, this isn't very good. Like,
Well,
you usually find something good about it.
I've heard that there's definitely some that people may not have ever heard of that are not the greatest. They're hard to watch, even though they're Hitchcock movies.
Yeah, I guess, you get down to like Juno Paycock and Easy Virtue. Who knows if those are good or not? Sure.
I mean, even Family Plot, which I think was like a 70s movie or something like that. One of his last, 1976. I've heard it's all right, but not great.
Not great.
Yeah. Cool. Well, thank you for joining us for this episode 657. We appreciate your listenership. If you haven't seen Rebecca or The Proposition, I would say go do it. They're good catalog movies to watch. Lots to think about. Good stuff for sure. We will be back next week with Gladiator 2. If all goes to plan. That's coming out in theaters. And thoughts and hot takes on what you will think about Gladiator 2.
I think I'm going to find it unnecessary. That's kind of my theory about it right now.
Mm-hmm.
However, I do think I'll leave that movie being like, you know what? Ridley Scott can still make a good movie or can still shoot good action scenes.
What concerned me, I think I'll agree.
Yeah.
That I'll probably have good things to say about it in general, but I'm not sure the time and place is right for a Gladiator 2 to like strike gold a second time.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
25 years later. And
right. I don't know. There's just something about it that feels more like a cash in than we had to make this for artistic reasons.
Exactly.
Which is fine. I'm not against a cash in for sure, as long as you've done what you can do with it.
I'm excited for Denzel in it though. I think that'll be fun.
What I'm not excited about is I saw like a little making of featurette where they were talking about how they did in computers bringing water into the arena. Have you seen this?
No, I've not seen this.
So supposedly there's a historical record that they had water battles in the arena.
Yeah, I've heard about that.
Fill it with water. So they did it. They're going to do it in Gladiator 2, spoiler alert. And they did it entirely digitally.
Oh, so you use real water?
Right.
Oh boy.
That's what scares me. Is like
original
Gladiator, when you watch it, clearly the lion and like some of that stuff is digital. But
the
like,
tiger is, yeah.
Right. For the most part, it's all in camera. For the most part.
Right.
And so I don't want this to be, for the most part, not in camera. And that I have a feeling, judging by, the guy standing on the rhino and stuff like that. Or riding the rhino. Have you seen that in the trailer?
No, I've not seen a trailer for Gladiator 2.
I'm
completely honest.
I'm spoiling it for you then.
Okay.
I have a feeling that a lot of it is going to be CG battle stuff, and I don't like that.
No, and I feel like Ridley Scott, being the era he came from, like he's always shied away from CG. He's used it. He made The Martian, right? The Martian obviously has CG in it, but like he still went out to the desert and shot things, and then just used CG to like change the sky and change the background. So, you know, I've always felt Ridley Scott like has had a gentle hand, or has used CG efficiently, because he's of an era of the practical in-camera effect. So I'm disappointed to hear already that he seems to be leaning hard into CG in his late 80s.
Well, yeah, and he made like The Last Duel recently, which I'm sure had some CG elements.
Of course
in
it does,
but
yes.
felt very tactile and real.
Right, because I feel like you had guys on horses. Right, yeah. I don't want to get into the little CG debate. I'm not anti-CG. It's obviously used everywhere. But when it's used well, you don't notice it because it's used as background stuff, or it's used to clean things up.
And also it's Gladiator 2. Like there's a precedent. Like the first movie exists. The first movie feels raw, feels somewhat accurate to the time period. I won't say what's in the trailer, but what was in the trailer felt like fantasy and not a gladiator movie.
Not what you expect Roman gladiators to be doing in that era.
It's certainly not what comes to mind when I think about that. So maybe these things exist in the history books and that we just don't put them on screen because it's too hard in the past. And now that we have CG tools, you can do it. I don't know. I'm just not looking for another 300 movie in my Gladiator.
It sounds like we've primed ourselves for disappointment already. So,
I'm primed.
Tune in next week when you hear James and Kyle
confirm our bias.
Confirm our bias about this movie. Exactly.
You got it. Meanwhile, check out the video version on YouTube. Support us on Patreon. Leave us an Apple Podcast review or send us a listener email. Instructions on how to do all those things are in the description of this episode. And we'll see you guys there. Until then, keep it cinereal.
You're still here? It's over. Go home. Go.